and welcome to Claim to Game. I'm your friend, host, and honorary game noob, Clint.scheirer. Together we will learn new games, mainly tabletop RPGs, step by step. Today's episode is simply, what is Goblin Quest RPG? What are my top 3 tenders and toughs? And what aspect of Goblin Quest will we be devouring in our next episode of Claim to Game? Hello and welcome back to Episode 2, Season 1 of Claim to Game, a predominantly educational fun podcast in which I am daring to coin the word fungicational. Eat your heart out, Merriam-Webster, you salty dictionary goddess! You are here, my friend. You are here, yes, you are someone who wants to systematically learn how to play a new tabletop role-playing game, one game at a time. And the game for this season was revealed in our last episode to be Goblin Quest, the RPG brought to you by game designer Grant Howitt, whose works include but are not limited to Honey Heist, Die the RPG, Spire, Unbound, One Last Job, Heart, and most recently, at the time of this recording, Eat the Reich, which was funded fully on Kickstarter. In essence, Goblin Quest RPG is a lighthearted, goofy game. Plenty of laughable moments for perfect one-shot games with families, game nights with friends. Hey, maybe both. It's possible that your friends could also be part of your family. Gameplay is about 2 hours projected, depending on how long-winded you are. And truth be told, I need a change of pace in my 2-hour nightly routine of watching reruns of The Office, Parks and Rec, and Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Ron Swanson, played by actor Nick Offerman in Parks and Rec, said, "Friends, 1 to 3 is sufficient." While for Goblin Quest RPG, you're allowed 2 to 6 friends, including yourself, for a sufficient gaming experience. Now, going back over my personal terminology for posterity's sake, let's define once again what I mean as we lean into the next segment. Clint's top 3 tenders and toughs, and in this case, for Goblin Quest. The aspects of a game I find interesting or fun without much effort right out of the box or book fall in the tender category. It's like a medium rare piece of perfectly cooked, ready to eat meat, and all you need to do is dig in and enjoy that sweet, sweet, delicious flavor. Now, the tough category, on the other hand, I equate it to steak that is cooked well done. And some people say well done steak is ruined, inedible, garbage. Couldn't disagree more. Growing up, my mother only wanted steak well done for various health reasons, and I learned how to enjoy a tough, well done steak. You douse it with ketchup, A1 sauce, steak sauce, and other various dips and dallies, and it will eventually be worth eating, but requires a little extra work, both in the post-cooking preparation and extra chewing to enjoy that entree. Toughs will be challenges or learning curves that eventually yield the pretty tasty reward and satisfaction that was intended for the gameplay, but they'll need more effort on our part to get there. And in the future, to narrow down these explanations, we're going to use some caveman talk. Tenders, good, like chicken tenders. Toughs, someday good, like someday chicken tenders. And here are my tenders for Goblin Quest. We're going to use a little bit of abbreviation, much like the Terminator movie franchise. T1, Goblin Quest is fun, silly, and creative with very low investment for those playing. T2, no GM is required. Built-in rhythms and beats and setting keep the game moving forward, and you can start playing right away. And T3, it's rules light. So it's focused more on storytelling within boundaries to keep things moving and grooving. Let's unpack all that. Number 1, creative, silly, fun with low investment. The goal of the game is creativity, fun, and chaos. My first time playing a tabletop role-playing game was playing Dungeons & Dragons with my brother-in-law and my college roommate. I was pretending to be a pre-made character in a short adventure, which I'm pretty sure came from the second YouTube video in a predominant YouTuber's playlist, and I will put that in the show notes if any of you guys want to enjoy that. Anywho, I remember asking my brother-in-law, who was in the game master role, the dude who's in charge running the game for you newbies out there, so what can I do? What can my make-believe warrior priest do in this made-up world? What is he supposed to do? And I may be remembering his words incorrectly, but I believe the paraphrase version of what he said was, "Whatever the hell you want to do, Clint. Your imagination is the limit. You just tell me what you're trying to do. I'll tell you what the rules are in relation to what you're trying to do. And what followed for the next 30 minutes was my former roommate and I, who was also playing a made up character, trying to fight up some made up goblins. And let me tell you, they were way scarier and more deadly than what you're going to be playing in Goblin Quest. It was us thinking that we could just do whatever we wanted. I decided I was going to jump on top of this big rock in the middle of the room to swing my medieval mace, and I was rewarded for my creativity, insert air quotes here, by getting an arrow shot straight through my made up character's body. So, what did I learn during this pilot episode of my tabletop RPG career? That there are limits to my character's ability within the made up world. My actions have both good and bad consequences. And when you and the other made up characters have a common goal to achieve, such as saving the princess from the dragon, or finding the buried treasure guarded by the giant skeleton, or convincing the barkeep at the local inn to give you another beer at a discounted price, the actions you choose can either help you get closer to this goal or farther away. And typically, at least with Dungeons and Dragons in my gaming experience, if you are actively being too goofy and make choices that hinder the party from the common goal of the other players, you will probably have some pretty cranky friends or cranky players that don't want to play with you. In another game I was playing with some other friends, one player decided to completely ignore a battle that was happening against rabid wolves in a cave. All the other characters were engaged in defeating the enemy, and this other person? Well, they decided to ignore the battle and search for treasure. And what happened? We all died permanently, including the fella searching for the treasure. They came after him once they had eaten up all of us. But he only found complete and utter destruction, like the Buffalo Bills in a Super Bowl. Shout out to the movie Heavyweights. The word that comes to mind is investment. This particular game created a high investment for the players and characters to succeed in the task, whatever it may be. Let me tell you, friend, though the players playing Goblin Quest create tasks and have a common goal, this game sets the bar really low on investment. From the get go, and as we will explore later on, these goblins are practically already doomed to fail. Remember, the back of the book uses the phrase fatal ineptitude, and will they, the goblins, survive? Probably not. So why play if you're doomed to fail? Because Goblin Quest RPG is about the fun you have along the way. It's like cool runnings, man. Peace be the journey. Or maybe we should rephrase it to goblins dying in hilarious ways while failing in their initial goals be the journey. Tomato, tomato. Tender number 2, T2, the game master is optional. One of the hardest things when you truly love tabletop RPGs, at least in my experience, is that I am often the one who ends up running the game itself, and other players get to be playing the game. And I like running the game, it's fun. But it's always such a wonderful treat when I get to play as a player and I don't have to run the entire show. Goblin Quest has a fantastic mechanic to allow for GM-less playing, and it's called the action token. For anybody who's a newbie to tabletop RPGs, GM is a short abbreviation for Game Master, the person running and facilitating the game. We're going to talk more about the action token, that mechanic that allows for GM-less play. And we're also going to talk about GM-less play versus GM-run games in a later episode, but it's a great way to keep the game moving and lets everyone, including your favorite forever GM in your life, to play as a player. And lastly, the number 3, Tender T3, it's rules light, like Bud Light, Coors Light, Light Bright, Crystal Light. The story you create with the other players follows a 3-act structure. The dice are rolling, and they are going to be 6-sided dice, like the kind that you play in Yahtzee or Farkle or pretty much any normal game that's not a tabletop RPG. So really, it's a great entry-level RPG for new players to begin with. Okay, now it's time for the toughs. T1, T2, T3. Tough number 1. The setting is so specific. T2, open-ended paralysis. And tough number 3, T3, rules hacks. So the first tough, the setting being so specific, is an argument that I have seen on Reddit time and time again. You get new game masters, people wanting to run the game, and they ask, should I buy a pre-made adventure or should I make my own, which in the tabletop role-playing community we call that homebrew. And while it sounds like a good idea, since you aren't having to come up with names and places and goals and obstacles and rando names out of your Yoo-hoo from a random name generator online with a pre-made adventure, you don't have to create all of that. There's a lot of reading involved, a lot of prep in just knowing the material that you've bought with a pre-made game. You want to be able to talk intelligently, and you need to absorb the entire story by reading it first. At least that's for me. And dude, I listen to Audible. Like I listen to audiobooks, and I'm not the fastest reader. To be honest, with my aging brain, reading makes me tired, and I'm not always motivated to look at a physical book, which a lot of our tabletop RPG books come in book form or paper form or PDF form. And since this game setting takes up only 10 to 15 pages, this isn't the biggest slog. I'm kind of pulling at straws here, but I feel in order to have my players fully grasp the setting for a one-shot game with Goblin Quest, I'm going to need to read through it. And to read through it, that's going to take time. Now, it's either going to take time to read through it, or it would take time if you were creating the setting yourself. So, like I said, double-edged sword. But good luck trying to get 3 to 6 goobs players to try to read something. It's like herding cats or tauntauns on a hoth. Neither scenario is very desirable. Tough number 2, T2, open-ended paralysis. Now, due to the genius of Grant Howitt, during the creation of this game, he reached out to 7 different game designers asking for them to submit adventure ideas or quest starters. And by taking those ideas and placing them into the 3-act structure during the quest making process, you can actually really flesh out what your goblins are going to do and what their goals are. I found this when I played this with a few players hard. It was a little bit difficult because many of them had very literal thinking minds like my own. And while we will take a closer look at this in a different episode, I'll let you guys decide whether I was overthinking this. I'll let you be the judge. Is this truly a tough, or is it actually a tender? And finally, tender number 3, rules hacks. Does anybody remember Hacksaw Jim Duggan, that pro wrestler in the 80s and 90s? And heck, even the 2000s? I can't even say the word hack without hearing him shout, ho, with his 2x4 raised to beam somebody straight in the mouth. Rules hacks are awesome. A rules hack is equatable. Is that a word? Equatable? It's equatable to what I wish somebody had made a book about, what I wish somebody had made a game about, what I wish somebody had done with a movie, blah, blah, blah. A rules hack is exactly that. People who took the structure of a game and gave it new trappings or a slightly different change to the rules. And Grant added some really fun options in the back of the book with the great people who funded this Kickstarter when it was live, just for that reason. And I added this as a tough instead of a tender because for somebody who's newly learning the game, I just want to learn the main game first. And Grant even talks about this in the book. You might want to start just learning the main game, play the game with the main setting before diving into some of those rule hacks. Black and white thinkers here, messing with the rules can throw maybe you off. It throws me off. And it doesn't mean that I can't have fun, but I need to explore these later so that I know what in the blue hell I'm doing, according to Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. In another episode, I will dedicate our time into exploring these hacks and also what makes them similar or unique from the main game. It's kind of like llamas versus alpacas. Go ahead and look it up. So in our next episode, we'll start chewing on one of my toughs, sliding into the game setting, and we will marvel at the Great Battle Camp. We'll look at this pre-made setting that attempts to take the hard thinking out of fun. We'll peruse the creatures other than goblins who may appear within the game setting, and we'll also discuss the potential ways to immerse your players and get them up to speed, whether that's by giving them pre-game homework, throwing them in blind, or possibly a few in-between options. If this is your first episode, and welcome to the pod, don't forget that if you want your own copy of Goblin Quest to follow along step by step as we learn, I am going to include a link into the show notes for you to purchase, but just a disclaimer, this is an affiliate link, and if you choose to use this link, I may earn affiliate commission at no extra cost to you. I do only promote, however, services or products that I've investigated and I feel can deliver value to you, such as Goblin Quest. join us in 2 weeks as we continue our quest claiming Goblin Quest. We'll make a cannonball splash into that goblin spawn pit and all the locations, potential NPCs, and silly willy adventures the pre-made setting has to offer. Can't get enough? Subscribe to our show through the podcast listening application of your choice and leave us a bangin' review, whether that be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Go visit our website at www.claim2gamepodcast.com, where you can listen to episodes, sign up for exclusive fan-based emails, find access to our Discord server, Claim to Game, or find us on Patreon. Feel free to send any feedback, thoughts, or suggestions to clint.scheirer at claim2gamepodcast.com. And until the next time we make our claim to game, one game at a time.